Well, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Excited for this conversation. Maybe we can take 30 seconds or so just to, for you to introduce yourself, let me know about what your company does, maybe something you're proud of that you guys have done, and, what's your focus with this agency on the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. So I run Laurel Leaf. We're a content marketing agency for B2B SaaS and AI. And we help startups, clarify their positioning and messaging and then help them scale that into content that drives demand across different channels. I think what I'm most proud of is just like the, you know, number of startups that we've been able to help with their websites and seeing the growth that they've experienced since working with us, and just seeing that has been really exciting. And I think where I want to take things next, or what's upcoming for us, is really like continuing to scale our expertise and just do create more of ongoing partnerships with our clients and kind of help them grow on other channels in different ways.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think that's probably very key for you as a competitive advantage, let's say, of, really diving into a strategy and, involving yourself more in the businesses of people and creating those deep relationship with them, right? That someone can replicate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, every interaction, every conversation, like giving them a new insight and really being like that valuable, trusted partner, quote unquote, which gets overused, but, there's a reason for cliches sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, eventually that's where you want to be, right? Not just like another agency that's you delegate work to, but actually, okay, we're in this together and helping, really involved and committed into, growing and helping you grow your business. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, one thing I'm curious about is I mean, I was chatting with a friend yesterday who also is in content, and I was asking about AI and all that stuff because obviously, there's been a lot of chatter, especially like when was it, like early 2022, when the whole thing started. And I know you started ramping up your agency at that time. So I'm just curious from that state of mind, because you must have been like, wow, this is a weird, ironic twist of life that this is all happening at the same time. So I'm curious, like, what was going on in your mind at the time? Like, I don't know, did you have doubts, or, like, what was going on there?
Yeah, so it was 2023, I believe, and we launched, and at the same time, ChatGPT blew up, and our only positioning was we're a copywriting agency. So, you know, I was immediately panicking and freaking out because I was just like, "What have
Man.
I done? Like, how is this happening? What am I gonna do? Like, what's the plan from here?" Like, I can't continue going like this. So that first year was a lot of just stumbling and kind of moving in the dark and just, you know, going after whatever opportunity we could. And it was really scary, but I think it really forced me to just be relentless in terms of, my marketing. And I mean, we made this shift this year, but forcing ourselves to really differentiate ourselves and clarify like our positioning and messaging and like why, companies should work with us beyond just the service that we offer. I think with agencies, whether that's design, development, you name it, like, there is this risk of being commoditized. So
Hmm.
over the last few years, it really forced me to kind of differentiate ourselves and, yeah, like move beyond just, being associated with the service that we provide. Is no, we're now solving a problem. So we're not necessarily seen as another agency, but we're seen as the only company or solution that's going to solve that particular problem. So that's
Nice.
number one. I think that's probably the biggest learning from this. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway, like, in the grand scheme of things.
Hmm.
But, yeah, a lot was going through my mind. That was a rough year.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, like, because I remember at that time people were just like getting so excited, firing people. And I remember Like obviously the content piece was the big one because like, oh, I just ask it whatever and then it produces content. And I just and people were like, yeah, this is good. But so like what there was probably like 6 months to a year where people were excited and then they were like, wait a minute, actually we might need some people to help us with that. So it looks like it's weirdly, happened at the same time as you were going through your own thing, and then probably you realize like, wait a minute, actually, we're solving a bigger problem, and probably people were like, yeah, actually, there's agencies solving like a bigger problem than just like getting just random, average copy for a website. So it's quite interesting, but it looks like it was a blessing in disguise, right? Because you probably were like, I don't know. Did you get questions from people like, "Hey, why would I hire you if I could just like do it, with AI or something like?" Did you get those sorts of things?
Yeah.
Um,
So luckily, I think my marketing did a pretty good job at disqualifying those people. So it did not happen. Yeah, it didn't happen too often, thankfully. I
nice.
think the only times when I got asked it was when I was discussing a partnership collaboration, and they posed the question to me of what if the client raises that as an issue? And my
Hmm.
answer is usually just, well, then they're not our ideal client.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I would assume people that want like that means they probably want to create content at scale, and the quality of the content is not really what you help people with, and probably the strategy as well is not what they're looking after, right? They're just looking at someone to crank out content or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think like there's I mean, we can help, create content at a consistent cadency.
Hmm.
And we can scale that to an extent, but also like, that comes, with its own like price tag and there's strategy involved with that. So I think people sometimes conflate scale with like, cheap. And
Hmm.
that's not always the case. You can do it thoughtfully. You just need to have the right systems. But yeah, if
Yeah.
you're creating, slop at scale, then yeah, it's like a waste of
Yeah.
time for everyone.
Yeah. And I would assume the people you're, you know, service and partner with are not people that just want to like, do some sort of programmatic SEO and just like publish like 1,000 articles or something like that to get like 100 clicks here and there. Like they probably like are like higher ticket and they actually probably talking to maybe executives and something like that. So you really need to have like, good, useful content for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And now even more so because of AI, because everyone can create content, like
Hmm.
the barrier has opened up and everyone can do it, but the bar at the same time has risen. So
Yeah.
for it to actually be good and effective, you now need a lot more of those unique insights, subject matter
Hmm.
expert input to really kind of make it stand out.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, and I thought that was so interesting because obviously, there's on one side, like you were saying, like the barrier of entry is like lower. So, if you're kind of really bad at it, then it definitely helping you kind of level up. But then there's only so far you can go, right? There's a bottom line there. So you need to add more experience and insight, like you were saying, because otherwise it just like it sounds like everyone else, right? Might be better than the very bottom of the barrel, but yeah, so it's quite interesting, good and bad, I guess. Cool. I'm curious to hear a bit more about you know um, kind of your competitive advantage. How do you see it nowadays? Obviously you've talked about being more of a partner with people, but you know in the execution, what does it look like? So I know you have frameworks, probably how you position yourself as well. But yeah, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, I would say most of our engagements start with a website messaging project. So,
Okay.
clients come to us thinking that they need someone to help them write the copy on their website. But
Okay.
that's really the last step in, what that collaboration looks like. What's actually
Hmm.
going on is that no one has a shared language for how they talk about the company and the product.
I see.
And so when that happens and the company continues to grow, the entire messaging on, from the go-to-market teams is telling a different story. And that's causing a
Mm,
lot of fragmentation and misalignment down the line. And then imagine if the company's in a growth stage, that misalignment scales. So
mhm,
imagine the sort of drops in conversion that might be causing just because there's friction or confusion in the buyer journey. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to them in the first place. So what we
yeah,
do is have a workshop with them to really define and clarify how they talk about position their company and how they talk about it. So we create this sort of North Star, and then
mhm,
that gets used for the website. And we've worked on enough websites to know, how to structure them and, what needs to go where. And from there, it's like really we have all that baseline foundational information. So
mhm,
not only does that get used for the website copy or content, you can also scale that in like your entire marketing and, communication strategy across social, email, you know, ongoing articles, etc. We really start there. And I think
mhm,
because we start there, which is such a like it's really at the heart of the company. I think we create this sort of close relationship with them because we're the first people that really help them put that down on paper and get the CEO and the chief product guy aligned, So I think, the closer we get to the heart of it, more you can really extend that relationship.
mhm,
And also because it's also so we have our process for doing the messaging and the questions we ask. We know which questions to ask, and we also know the types of answers to extract because we can say like, okay, what's a value proposition, and that's made of a few different components, but then they'll give us a feature name, and it's like, okay,
mhm.
well,
I see.
that's not a value proposition. So if they don't have experts guiding them through that process, the whole process isn't going to go the way it's supposed to.
That's cool. Yeah, I can definitely see the partnership kind of element in what you're saying because obviously those are I guess it's so easy to get confused by all those different, you know, terms and what makes the most sense to share with customers and clients, but also like I guess people don't usually talk openly about those things. So, I would imagine you having that discussion with them must bring like a lot of clarity, especially defining those concepts and like bringing that to them. Like that must be a lot of the reactions I'm assuming from them is like, oh wow, now things are way clearer than they were before, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a CMO just earlier today, and she was asking like, what's our category? Like, what should we, call this product? And I'm like, it doesn't even matter actually. Like, if your audience doesn't have a shared like name for this or like an official
Mm,
definition, you
I
don't need
see.
to get tripped up over what the category is as long as you're clear on what problems it solves, how it works, and what the results are, your audience doesn't care at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So I think sometimes, teams will start spinning their wheels around an issue that doesn't even really
Hmm.
matter in the, big scheme of things.
Yeah, and I feel business is one of those categories. I feel it's like health. Like there's so many voices that say so many things that it's so easy to get confused about. Okay, but what's actually working, right? Um, and I feel business is the same. It's like there's so many people talking about so many things so loudly. And it's so easy to be like, okay, what should I do? What actually matters? So yeah, I feel like getting clarity is like a massive things for lots of people in business. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. Yeah. And I know you also have that. I think the messaging map that you have. I'm assuming that's a workshop that you guys do, or is it kind of a prep for the workshop that you do usually?
So the message map is a result of the workshop that we do.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And the way we create that is, yeah, through a workshop with the client. And then in some of our engagements, we also have customer interviews. And so we also infuse the voice of the customer in the message map.
Nice.
So yeah, the message map is a sort of end deliverable of that.
Um, how did you come about kind of that framework, or maybe the larger question that I have for you is, you went from freelancer to hiring other people. So obviously, when you're alone, like usually you don't see, or you might see the need, but you might not put as much effort in, clarifying your SOPs and your processes and things like that. So I'm curious to hear like how that worked out for you, like getting to a framework and getting to some robust processes in your agency.
Yeah, it was a journey for us. I think what we do today and, our message mapping offer and how that's unfolded is the result of 3 years of, growing
Yeah.
this business and this agency. So, in the beginning our process was we send the client a questionnaire and then we start working on the copy, whereas, now it's a lot more involved, and I think
Hmm.
that's sort of the manifestation of my own growth as a marketer and founder in this space.
Okay.
I realized if I wanted my own agency to grow, I had to level up my own vocabulary, in the B2B marketing space. So
Hmm.
I did a lot of learning and just like discovery and really like learned like the language that my target audience was speaking so that naturally, I can actually resonate with them and really be
Hmm.
level up our positioning and elevate, yeah, what we're doing and, how they view us as well as the prices that we can command. So that was a big journey. I think, joining communities was a big one and just, diving deeper into people who are, other experts in this space. I mean, there's April Dunford, who's like the big positioning queen. And then,
Hmm.
guys like the Fletch PMM guys who share great frameworks. There's also this guy, Garrett Justice, and he inspired my original message map, and I've since built on that. Um,
Cool.
so yeah, it's really been a work in progress, both, personally as well as, professionally in just, yeah, my own education.
So when you say you've learned and you've done, like, I'm assuming, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you've had like a ton of conversations with a bunch of different people, really to understand what's going on in their world and trying to. You said communities, so I'm assuming probably joining some calls and some, I don't know, Slack channels, things like that, and getting involved. Is that what
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, so I joined Exit 5, and that's a community for B2B marketing professionals. So really going through, all the threads and conversations there, understanding like what are people talking about right now? What are their,
Mm.
what are their challenges? How do they talk about those challenges? What's the industry jargon, Like once you start, speaking, and it's funny because it's so like practicing what we preach, right? Like talk
Yeah, I know.
customers'
Yeah.
language, like, hang out where they are, and it's like, duh, light bulb. Um, so yeah, that's, that was a big one, and then, yeah, connecting with a lot of people. I think, like, half my week is just, like, calls and talking to people, and then I would say I've also had support from coaches, so just like,
Mm.
our clients need coaching in terms of messaging and content from us, I need coaching in other things, so, yeah, trying to make the most of my own strengths and opportunities, so, yeah.
Nice, that's cool. What kind of coaches? Business coaches or?
Yeah, yeah, so, coach is helping me essentially grow my agency, so,
I
I'm
see.
working with someone now who helps, agencies with their positioning and building pipeline.
Oh, okay, like lead generation and yeah, business development stuff. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you always, it's like, I guess it's more common in the therapy industry, right? Where because it's mandatory for them to be followed by, therapists while they have their own clients. But yeah, I feel like in the business world, it's not like, well, I feel there's a bit more of like, oh, you just go with your little sword and you just go and
Yeah.
try to explore and like, try to kill whatever dragons come your way. But you're kind of like solo, whereas it's not, at least from what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing, it's not that widespread. So that's cool. So yeah, you've built your processes, and I know, you tell me you spend like half of your time on client calls. So I'm assuming, like that's opposite to further relationship and, like do the work that you need to do. But I'm curious, like, how does that scale for you? Or do you have like, yeah, how do you see that? Because I'm assuming the more you grow, potentially that means more calls. And then eventually, you have unlimited hours in the day. So yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah. So when I said I spend half my week on calls, that's not with clients. That's more like people I'm, just meeting for the first time through
I
LinkedIn or
see. Oh,
community.
okay.
So it's building net new relationships. I
I
definitely
see.
try to minimize the time I'm spending on client calls because, yeah, that's a huge time suck.
I know. Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. But I mean, I guess still that still applies, right? Because I guess, the more interest you get, the more conversations you have to have. So eventually, like, you can't fill out your whole day with talking to new people and building relationships, because eventually you need to manage the company and all that stuff, which I'm assuming you're doing a fair bit of that, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
um,
it's definitely a balance between, yeah, new relationships, development, and then, managing our projects and team. So for now,
yeah.
it's working.
Well, I'm happy. Um, yeah, I want to switch a bit more to like, how are you guys using AI? Because I know you're telling me you're doing workshops, so I'm hearing a lot of face-to-face time. Um, but I'm curious, have you tried using it? The friend I was talking to yesterday was like, yeah, I mean, he's telling his freelancers like, hey, if you want to use it and it's as good. He's more on the SEO, content marketing side of things, but he was saying them like, hey, if it's as good as whatever you would produce, just like knock yourself out. But I'm curious to hear your perspective there, because I'm assuming you've done probably a ton of experiments to see like, okay, how good is it? How can we use it? So yeah, can you tell me a bit more about what you've tried there?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that we're doing. I think right now, which is probably what most teams are doing, is just using it as like a thought partner.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
when it comes to just, my day-to-day work, let's say we're working on a project, I use it to help me, wrestle through ideas and whatnot, just to like, give me another
Yeah.
perspective. When it comes to the work that we're doing, let's say when it comes to building out our message maps, I'll have it do like an initial run through of the data entry from those conversations and transcripts. And
Okay,
then I'll
cool.
do a run through myself just to verify, add a bit of meat to it.
Mm-hmm.
Cause, there's hallucinations and, fact
I know.
checking has to be done, but it definitely helps, save time for us, especially now because, the expectations are a bit higher in terms of timelines and speed. And I don't think we would be able to deliver at the rate that we do without AI, is like, especially with startups, like every day counts. So they want that momentum. So it's definitely built into like our process. And then, we'll help it create a first draft, but it's rarely the end product. So I think like, it's a great like partner and tool to have, but
Yeah.
what I create with AI versus what someone else creates with AI is wildly different. And I've actually seen that happen. So, it's non-deterministic. There's a different output every time. So it's like it takes in so much context too. Oh yeah, it's a great tool. And then I think the second way that we're using it right now is, well, we haven't actually used it, is we built an AI agent to
Okay.
help us with each step of our lowest ticket offer right now, which is minimum viable
I
message.
see.
And basically, the steps are automated with
Mm-hmm.
approval milestones in between. We haven't been able to run that yet because right as we built that, I thought, okay, that, offer is going to sell like hotcakes. All of a sudden, we started selling our higher ticket offers. So
Well, I
the
mean,
devil works in mysterious ways, right?
I
Like, so typical. Well, I'm still quite excited to get a client for that service of ours, and just kinda test it out. I reached out to someone if they wanna test it, so we'll see.
Nice. Yeah, that's exciting. You mentioned, you know, the difference between the output that you get versus what someone else's get. Can you can you expand on that just to
Yeah.
maybe? yeah, what do you think makes it so?
Yeah. I guess I'll reference a project as an example. So we were
Okay.
recently working on a video script,
Okay.
and we created a first draft, so with 3 iterations, and then the client left some feedback, and then they also sent us a version they created using AI.
I see.
And, it was okay, but when let's say, like, with a script, for example, like, you know, in a
Mm-hmm.
voiceover is meant to be spoken. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so much that goes into it in terms of rhythm, in terms of
Yeah.
how you structure it so that it's easy for a voiceover artist to then speak out loud. There's so many more nuances that go into creating a script, um, than someone who doesn't hasn't done this 100 times, might know or be aware of. So that's number 1. And then, you know, we also we just have a like I use AI to write a script, but even that takes longer than someone might think because I go over every little word to just make sure it hits and it clicks and it's referencing the right features and the right value propositions. Um, and again, like that's messaging work, So there's so much more that goes into it, even with AI, than people really kind of might acknowledge on the surface. So
Yeah.
what I create with AI is not what someone else creates with AI.
Yeah, I feel that's I right now we're at a time where people start to understand the limits and the constraints of it. And how I like to see it is, we have very limited amount. Like, I can focus on talking to you right now, but if there was so much more happening around me, I'll be like, what's going on? So there's only so much that our working memory can tackle. But obviously, an AI can just like take a book and just like extract a bunch of things at the same time. It's like way more powerful in that sense. But then the context window is still limited. So it doesn't have like all the memory experiences, intuition that we have. So it can't really apply that to that specific context. And I feel like what you're describing is kind of that. It's like lots of people are like, oh yeah, it's super helpful and helps me brainstorm, those kind of things. But then what it's lacking is like exactly what you're describing, kind of like, all those experiences that you've had, and you're like, yeah, I mean, technically it could work on paper in theory, but in practicalities, like, if we were to start executing on it, there'd be a bunch of small problems that, you can't really identify
Yeah.
upstream. But when you've done it a bunch of time, you're like, yeah, that could work. But then we have to tackle this problem and this problem, like you're saying about the very specific voiceovers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also it's about you have to be able to or have the expertise to challenge the AI,
Hmm.
right? Because AI
Yeah.
is not going to challenge you. So you have to
Yeah.
have the experience to able to spot those blind spots. Like,
Hmm.
because it's also very selective. Like it'll take something, but then the client included like a direction in the brief, and then it won't
Hmm.
have that, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's just randomly kind of selecting like what it wants, but you have, you have to deliver on the client's wishes and you have to be able to spot that gap.
Hmm.
And yeah, that takes someone, with experience doing this.
Yeah, I feel like there's ways to go around it, and beyond like, okay, just like chain the prompts, as in like, you just tell it like, here are the criteria. And then once you've just taken that, just apply it to the documents. But still, like in the end, like you're saying, you seem to go over it and be like, dude, what are you talking about? This is not even the focus of,
Yeah.
what I'm asking you. It is like this big chunk of like value that's missing that we need to, account for. And I think that's, yeah, taking what it says at face value is definitely dangerous. And I've seen that sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I'm using it for work. And then I'm like, no, just stop doing this. This is definitely not that.
Mhm.
I'm trying to go with this. But yeah, I feel like in the end, you definitely need to review it, challenge it, and just make sure you're the one in control, right? And you're using it as a tool, really, more than anything else.
Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, cool. I'm pretty excited for you also for the service. I mean, hopefully you get someone soon. So that would be pretty cool.
I'm a little scared because I mean, there's so many steps in an agent and it's using different LLMs and, one model gets deprecated at some point. So I'm a
Yeah.
little wary of like, well, what if the model it's using right now, all of a sudden there's, you know, GPT 20, and it's like, does my entire thing break down? So I feel like there's still so many variables.
hmm
So yeah, we'll see how it all pans out.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess it's the problem with technology, right? Things evolve so fast that you need to maintain them and all that stuff. So it's another potential headaches down the line. But if it helps you right now and it works, then like, you probably just maintain it and have fun with it.
Yeah.
How how else are you using? Because you're telling me you've used it like right now for delivery, throughout the process, and I'm wondering like, maybe in your backend operations, do you use a bunch of automation and AI, to kind of reduce the admin so you guys can focus more on the client relationship and actually delivering work?
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, like we haven't had to create too many automations yet.
Oh, cool.
So we're using a content management platform, and within that platform, it has agents to help with repurposing content. So
Nice.
that'll help us really create like that content flywheel that, gets distributed across different channels.
hmm
The help of automation and, AI. So that's one thing. For the rest, I mean, like, there's like tools we're using with AI, but I wouldn't go as far as to say we've like automated like certain steps. Like I've had, Zapier connects when I onboard a new client and
hmm
whatnot. But I feel like that, yeah, it's feels a bit 101 at this stage when they're so advanced.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the processes that you have in place are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and that's like pretty good for you right now. And maybe
Yeah.
later on you'll just consider like, okay, once we're like growing and the frameworks that we have are constraining us, then you might go a bit heavier on that front. But it sounds like you're kind of like, yeah, that works for us right now.
Yeah, exactly. We're still a, boutique shop.
Yeah.
So just having the team aligned on what the steps are is working for us. But yeah, I'm sure like as that continues to scale, um, you know, we might add more in.
um Last question. How So, there's that, you went through that period of like, hey, what's our competitive advantage or differentiator with AI, ChatGPT, and you went through that. And I'm wondering, how do you see that evolving in the next coming years? People are using AI a lot in more ingenious ways and, getting some better and better results. So I'm wondering, how do you keep that advantage, that differentiation well into the future?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I recently put a post in my community asking people to send me, websites that they want me to audit. And even today with all of this wealth of information out there, I've seen some websites that need a lot of work. So I'm like, we can have all the tools, we can have all the information, but at the end of the day, like people are going to be people, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you're always going to need that outside perspective just
hmm
to shed light on opportunities or maybe gaps that you've missed. Even if you yourself have, the sophisticated tools and technology,
Yeah.
one doesn't correlate to the other, doesn't necessarily lead to quality. Um, and there's, always internal politics and decisions being made without much thought. So
hmm
I think there's always going to be room for this type of work.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's funny you mentioned politics. I had another guest on the podcast, and his opinion was also like, yeah, like, people are like overhyping the technology, etc. But like, have they actually tried to implement? And we were talking about digital transformation and in enterprise specifically, and he was saying, have they ever tried to do that? Because that, like, people are messy as hell, right? It's just like, they get confused, they get distracted.
Yeah.
Like, even if they have a roadmap, they're like, maybe you want to change stuff and on a whim or whatever. And there's so much going on inside their businesses, so much chatter and things like that. So many things to navigate that. Um, I feel what you're saying is like, hey, we actually focus, obviously use all those tools to be better at, delivering the work. But then there's like very kind of messy work that still needs to be done in terms of like, hey, how do we help people make decisions, how do we help them, get the right data to get those decisions? It sounds like you're doubling down on that part of the work, right?
Yeah, people are reliably unreliable. So that
That's good.
strategy, I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true. You can't change human nature, right? So yeah, that's the consistency there.